Hello, YouTubers. Joe Kersey here on Sunday night, January 26, 2014 at 1900 in the evening, Eastern Time. I kind of look like something out of Moby Dick, didn't I? Got the beard and my hat. It's not all that cold right now. It's in the mid-20s, but it was, 4 and 6 this morning and 14 in the early afternoon, and it's going to, start dropping here presently down to the below zero level here for about the next 3 days. So,
The clouds are breaking up.
Yes, Paul says the clouds breaking up, therefore it's going to be cold tonight. I wasn't even going to do anything today, but, well, it's Sunday and there was church. I'll tell you, if I hadn't had to read today, when I pulled out onto the road this morning, which had not been plowed, and wasn't plowed till 3 in the afternoon, interestingly. And then Powell Road hadn't been plowed either, and wasn't plowed when I came back at 1:30 in the afternoon. I would have seriously considered not trying to drive up there, although I got the 4-wheel drive truck, and there wasn't much traffic, and I'd left with plenty of time. So, in essence, despite a little, just a little fishtailing, not much. Actually, it was far more slippery on the way home around 1:30 than it was going up. Got up there reasonably safely. I was actually almost up to 50 miles an hour there on US 23, which was, it's one of those things when you realize you're going that fast and you slow down. But there just wasn't much traffic, and the people who were out weren't acting like idiots. And on the way home, people that were out weren't acting like idiots either, which is very refreshing up here because that's just, I didn't see a single person on their cell phone. Now, Paul said that he saw one this morning on the way to work, but, to only see one person in an entire day on the road on a cell phone, that's unusual nowadays. So in my 30-mile sample, I didn't see any on a cell phone.
I had 2.
Now Paul's saying he saw 2, but he's only got a mile and a quarter down, a mile and a quarter back. So now that's a little bit more of a dense sample or dense usage pattern. Anyway, I was wondering if they were going to have church because some of the churches, as it turned out, there were a number of churches that called services off. The Presbyterians called the services off. One of the many Methodist church around here called their services off. I don't know which one. How can you tell them apart? Well, you can't. That's not a dig at the Methodists. I grew up in a Methodist church. Well, it was called Methodist church, but it really wasn't a Methodist church. It was more of a Reformed, austere church.
Aren't they labeled as Methodist church in there? A different title for each one.
I don't know. I'm not involved with the Methodist church. So, but nonetheless, we had church, and now the rector. Turns out the rector was ill, but he had not shown up for the 8 o'clock service, at which there were 12 people, but they got to leave before the snow started because the snow didn't start till 7:30. His wife had been much sicker than he was, and the kids, I guess, were sort of snotty, but not sick. So he walked down, along with the kids, and Oh, I think Julie drove. I don't know if Julie drove, but anyway, they showed up, and despite hearing about this illness, they didn't. They didn't. None of them looked all that sick, although they were snotting around. They certainly weren't restraining themselves from shaking hands and touching people and getting in each other's face, everybody's face. So.
Great.
Well, we'll find out. I mean, I took a bunch of extra vitamin C when I got home, so we'll see. I'm sure I've been exposed to all this stuff anyway by now. So, uh, we commenced. We had 27 people at the 10:30 service. And that's counting the choir. That's everybody. I mean, that's everybody, period, including the platform party and the choir. And that's counting the 2 babies in arms from the people across the street. So, it was good. Now, Curran preached, our assisting priest, and she's always good. Well, they're generally all good. Charles is good. He's just good in a way that doesn't appeal to me a lot, usually. Whereas Curran generally appeals to me, and our deacon, Roseanne, does a very good job. So Curran preached, and that went well, and I did the Isaiah 9, 1-4 reading. What a truncated reading. And of course, it doesn't read as well in the NRSV as it does in the King James. Well, a lot of them don't, do they? And Paul Sabine did the 1 Corinthians reading. And the gospel is, the gospel is so good. The gospel is when Jesus wanders by the Sea of Galilee and he sees Simon, Simon Peter and Andrew, his brother, in their boats, and says, "Follow me." And then says, straightway they followed him. Straightway they followed. And then basically goes a little further along the coast and sees John and James, or James and John, I guess, and with their father Zebedee. And it says immediately they left and followed him. And I've always loved that image, and that made me think of a story that Charles told shortly after he arrived here in Delaware. He had sort of done his initial service down in Hillsborough, Ohio, at St. Mary's Episcopal Church. And he was having a discussion group one day, and that was the gospel for discussion, and talking about what's it take to follow Christ. And there was a fellow there that was in his mid to late 80s, excuse me. And Charles was emphasizing, I guess, in the discussion that, immediately they left everything and followed Jesus. And this guy was focusing on the James and John aspect of it, that they left their father Zebedee and just left him. Walked away.
Left their father.
Yeah, left him. And this older fellow said, "I have a real problem with this." And it turns out this guy actually had a small manufacturing business, and he had been wanting to leave it to at least one of his sons. And the sons apparently weren't wanting to get involved in this, and I guess they were leaving him. Maybe not immediately, but they were leaving him in the sense of not wanting to carry on and inherit or whatever. And so this guy had a number of issues with this, as So when he heard this story about two sons walking away from their father, he had a problem with that. So an interesting take on this. And of course, later on, there are a couple other places in the various Gospels that says, mother will be turned against daughter, daughter-in-law against mother-in-law, brother against brother. I mean, I come not to bring peace. I come to bring fire and the sword. And so it's an interesting start to the story, and the one I've always liked, and that's one reason why when we finally do get another dog, first of I believe ideally two dogs. One of those dogs is going to be named Zebedee.
What?
Zebedee.
Okay.
Well, yeah. Well, I like unusual names anyway, but in memory of James and John's dad, who by the way does not make a reappearance in any of the stories. Now some think that Salome is his wife, and the one that's by the foot of the cross, at the crucifixion, might be his wife, but old Zebedee, he just drops out of the picture. I think he needs a little bit more commemoration than that.
So therefore, we shall name our dog Zebedee.
Well, see, ideally,
in memory of him.
So, church was committed. There was one sort of. It wasn't a slip up. Well, it was a slip up, but it wasn't a slip up on anybody's part. Well, it was a slip up on the woman's part. Well, it really wasn't a slip up on her part because she's unsteady, And if anything, it was the carpet's fault. It was the carpet did it because it's thick, springy carpet. It's spring, and you can't really get. I often, I'm wobbling back and forth anyway, and then when I got in this carpet, I'm like doing this, and so she and her husband were they were going to bring up the bread and the wine, and they had done the collection, and so they bring up the bread, the wine, the collection, and her husband is always very attentive to her, and always helps her up the 2 steps from the aisle into the little chancel area, and I always kind of, I generally, when I'm up there reading, I always kind of glance down to see, that she didn't need any extra help getting up. And I'd look down, and it seemed to me that the guy had everything well in hand, and she was okay. And, well, as okay as she is. And so I resumed singing this, hymn that we're singing, and which is one I particularly liked. And then I'm Charles, God bless Charles, when he wants to stage direct, he won't just come over and tap you on the shoulder or tell you something overtly. He's always hissing and giving you hand signals. It's like, I don't, just, if you want me to do something, just tell me what you want me to do. So I became aware of this hissing coming in from the side. And I looked over at him, and then he sort of pointed, over this woman, and of course, clearly she was needing problems. She had fallen out on her knee. She had dropped the bread, and she had spilled half of the little jug of wine. Up and down her arm and on the carpet. Then once I saw what was going on, then you go help the woman up, pick up the bread, try not to get wine on all the white crap you're wearing, and she got up and she wasn't hurt. I mean, she wasn't hurt. She was just embarrassed, And so things got squared away, and then I scampered off out the side and over to the can and got a bunch of paper towels and tidied up her hand and tidied up some of the spill and retrieved the bread and I'm surprised they didn't go through some sort of exorcism of the bread since it had touched the ground. There's a certain amount of that kind of crap that goes on. But not today. Nope. We used the bread. And we used the bread that had fallen on the ground rather than the one that was in the plastic bag that had wine spilled on top of it. So common sense was prevailing up the altar today, which is refreshing because sometimes it's not.
Bread in the bag hadn't been opened yet. You spilled wine.
Well, no, the bread in the bag wasn't affected by the wine because it was in a bag. Well, anyways, that's without getting, bogged down in that. So that was the little adventure and today, and so there were no real theological conundrums or battles that needed to be fought after hearing the sermon today. Karen, for all of her iconoclasm, is not. She's not really a bomb thrower. Well, neither is Charles, but Charles just a lot of times just doesn't doesn't preach on the scripture. Whereas, Karen does and Roseanne definitely does. Sometimes Charles does. Well, most times he doesn't. Most times he talks about issues. He was pimping for this, which I actually might look at, actually. It's called the Big Class with Michael Curry. Well, Michael Curry is a bishop in North Carolina who actually ordained Karen and recommended for ordination, ordained her. And I didn't hear I have not heard this man preach, but the widow of my friend down there has heard him preach, and she says he's quite good. So I might. It's on the internet. It's on the internet. What isn't on the internet? So I might look at this. See, it talks about, whenever you hear the word journey, that's always makes everything very suspect, Online classes to all who desire to journey deeper into faith. Well, see, that jargon is like a car siren going off to me. We'll see. Try to keep an open mind. Well, that's what you got to do, don't you? More of that anon, but not in this video. Perhaps in a video tomorrow or later on this week, if I decide to. This isn't, which has nothing to do with what I discussed today, by the way. So on that note, I think. I came home and then. I thought, I'm going to have to shovel out in front of this mailbox because this mail carrier is going to get pissy and moany about it if I don't do it. So after I shoveled off the deck, and I thought, I haven't died yet. So I was feeling pretty good. And so then I sort of shoveled a little path down to the pole barn, and then I, using the pole barn as a skip, a skip area. I sort of did a little widening of one of the tire tracks down to to the end of the road, and I crossed over and I shoveled up to the mailbox, and I sort of shoveled a lot of stuff away from the mailbox so that the little Jeepster type mail truck can get in there. And now we're going to get some more snow here, but it'll make it a lot easier to shovel that out and keep the mailbox clear. But with these trucks we've got, my truck and Paul's trucks, I mean, we handle all this stuff very well. So by the grace of God, as long as the four-wheel drives keep working, we'll be okay. I didn't have any sort of physiologic problems doing this, but but when I was done, and this took about 40 minutes. But when I was done, I said to myself, now it's time to stop. Now it's time to stop. So I stopped. All is well. So on that note, I'm going to say, oh, wait a minute. Don't mind me. I'm not clutching my heart or anything. I just was rubbing myself. Well, there are various kinds of itches, aren't there, Paul? I'm going to say bye-bye, YouTubers.